What's welcome back to another Polemas video, and Annie Steven. I know, Annie Steven. He's getting his rerun, right, at reset, so let's talk about the unit, because look, for all the hate that it got when it first dropped, he's definitely got a lot better, right? Definitely a lot better through this past few years, oh my god, it's only been one past year, okay? Did he get better to the point to, you know, where he's really worth going for at the moment? Well, that's the question I guess we're gonna discuss over here in this video. So, all right, Anniversary Steven. Let's quick overview of the kit, right? In terms of stat-wise, you look at the stats, and everything looks bad, honestly, right? It's attack, special attack, defenses, HP. HP's not like terrible, but it's not like great either. And he is a mega unit, so he does mega, and he gets like 119 more speed and like nothing else. He got everything into speed, which is very, very, very funny considering his, you know, relatively low attack and special attack stats. So there's that. But anyways, all right, let's get into the moves. Dragon Ascent. Dragon Ascent is a very, very powerful move, though. At least Dragon Ascent is incredibly powerful. High BP, incredibly high BP move. It's a 4-gauge move that has big downsides, right? So that makes it so that the BP is very, 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 very high. He also has X attack. Got Draco Meteor as well as a special option, which is also a really, really powerful 3-gauge move here as well, so you know you could hit for flying and dragon, obviously, and then trying to move sky high, maxes out his crit in one move, gives super effective up next as well, and then if it's mega, also gives you extra +2 speed, and then the sync is just a regular mega sync, turns into Mega Rayquaza. And as for the passives, first of all, you have Hoenn Flag Bearer over here, which is just again basic Flag Bearer passive, but like for Hoenn, 10% for each, you know. For your team with each extra Hoenn unit added, right, in terms of damage, and then, you know, base 20% damage reduction, and then 3% for each extra Hoenn, blah blah blah. And then downside up, which is very, very nice, because instead of debuffing your defenses over here, so you buff them instead, so you get +2, or not +2, +1 defense, special defense every time you use Dragon Ascent. So instead of debuffing them, you get them buffed, and yeah, and you still have the 230 base power move over there, which is cool. Also, same for Draco Meteor, which could buff your special attack if you're using that for dragon type damage. And you got good form, which is a multiplier based on, you know, how many of your stats are raised. More stats that are raised, more powers up moves. Obviously, counts all that stuff, including crit, right? So that's really, really nice. Again, he's always whichever move you're using with him, you know, unless they're maxed out, right? But he's always buffing his stats. So with every single hit, his next hit generally is gonna be stronger, right? Unless you max this out or max the stats out. Then you got Move Gauge Refresh 4, which is just Move Gauge Refresh 4. It's just a nice passive for any unit in the game to have, basically. Then you got Mega Rayquaza, which doesn't have any like new passives or moves or like whatever. It's just like stats. So you do get this though if you saved it up for some reason. But yeah, he looks cooler if you like Mega Rayquaza, I guess. So there's that. Anyways, okay, moving on to the grid. So if you do have Anniversary Steven, you know, how many do you want in terms of like grid wise over here, right? At 1 out of 5, you basically have everything like damage wise, right? I guess you don't have much of the sync nuke stuff, but like, to be honest, even with the max sync new stuff, his sync isn't that great either, so just you can just ignore that. 1 out of 5 is, if you're just trying to use him for damage, 1 out of 5 is sufficient enough, right? Definitely enough. Okay, you have like this one sync new qualify, I guess 50%. So moving on, 2 out of 5, you got Head Start, which is depending on the situation could be very, very, very good, especially if you are megaing with him. Which is not a thing people do a lot with them. But if you do, right, that's kind of like, he has like Head Start and Adrenaline because it triggers twice. So that's nice if you need that in Master Mode. You get Sync Move Power Up Nodes, which, okay. And then Nothing much else. 3 out of 5, you do get some really, really nice stuff. First of all, you do have Fierce Entry, so if you are, again, syncing with him, he could be completely self-sufficient with his physical attack and crit. You also have Fleet Feet over here, Dragon Ascent, which gives you +1 speed every single hit with Dragon Ascent. This is definitely very, very, very good. Weather Wipe, low-key, very powerful as well in one specific scenario, in a very important scenario. Well, maybe there's more than one, but like there's one big one, okay? We'll talk about that later. We'll get to pros and cons. Crit Strike 2 on Draco Meteor is nice, right? Extra 20% on Draco Meteor. Sync freebies, all right, I guess, if you are, again, syncing with them. Clear Power Up is whatever. Clear as Day is also kind of whatever. It's situational, and then you got sync with Power Up nodes. So, yeah, this is definitely a unit that you could really utilize to, like, I'd say, you know, at least 85% capacity at 1 out of 5, so you don't need the extra copies, except for one specific scenario, I guess. Well, I mean, a few more, but yeah, 3 out of 5 is also nice as well with the Fierce Entry and Fleet Feet for the step buff. So anyways, all right. Well, let's go over some of the pros and cons. Pros over here, you have, again, at 3 out of 5, self-sufficiency at least. You have the flying and dragon DPS, both of those. Also, you do have the super effective up next as well, right? There's that. Third thing is, it is very, very, very fast, especially if you do mega with him. He has like 419 base speed, where he buffs his speed with every Dragon Ascent at 3 out of 5. And then you also have, this thing, if you don't have 3 out of 5 at least. So there's also that, and then you have Move Gauge Refresh 4. So very, very, very good gauge unit, definitely. Which is cool because he's a 4 gauge damage healer. And then you also have, that's where the Weather Wipe thing comes in. Very, very useful, is against Moltres, right? So with Annie Steven, it basically all but guarantees you, obviously the rest of your team matters too, but all but guarantees you an extra win streak, right? Well, probably even extra 3 win streaks, because once you could beat Moltres, you could probably get 2 more wins against whatever the other 2 gauntlets are, in almost any scenario where Moltres is going to be part of a legendary gauntlet, Moltres is probably going to be the bottleneck, right? Even maybe, obviously it depends on your box, but even in comparison to something like Cresselia, right? Moltres is probably going to be the bottleneck, just because Moltres' requirements are very limited, right? So yeah, that could guarantee you like probably 3, right? Extra win streaks in legendary gauntlet, so that's really, really nice. There are some other places where you can use this. I think a lot of Hoenn master mode stages do have weather stuff that they do. It's not as essential in comparison to Moltres to clear them, but it definitely could be helpful at least. And then you got the Master Fair passive. Again, it's a pretty basic Master Fair passive, but it's still something there, right? As for cons, there's a few cons, obviously. Big one, mediocre DPS. DPS is not great, right? It's not great. I think it is the best of the 3 second anniversary units, but that's not, speaking too much, because the average DPS for in a vacuum, right, off type wise for the other 2 are also not very, very good, but he is the best of the 3 in a vacuum, single target, just in general off type, right? And the other thing is there are better options, right? Like, for example, both being flying type damage healing Master Fairs, right? There's also Singsu Ethan. Although, funny thing, Singsu Ethan also doesn't have as much DPS or single target DPS, obviously, as Annie Stevens. So Annie Stevens, like, people clown on Annie Stevens' DPS, and it is very bad, right? Well, I wouldn't say very bad, but it's not great, right? Annie Stevens' DPS is not great, but people clown on it a lot. But like, it's very funny when people just bring up like other units that are commonly compared with Annie Stevens, like Singsu Ethan or this other 2 second anniversary units, and like they bring them up as comparison, but then all their DPS is like worse, or at least single target DPS, right? Which is funny, but yeah, there's better options right? There's, again, the Singsuit Ethan. Again, single target DPS wise, yes, Annie Steven is better, but I would definitely say Singsuit Ethan is probably overall the better unit. There are, again, definitely scenarios where Annie Steven is preferred, right, against the Moltres scenario, right? Or even, I'd say in general, I'd say most legendary gauntlet stages, I'd probably take Annie Steven. Not all of them, right? It depends on your team comp, right, as well. But yeah, Annie Steven, I'd say for a decent number of the gauntlet stage, but definitely something like Master Mode, right? Like that's 100%. I'd say like almost in every scenario, I'd say Singsuit Ethan would be better. But it's not like, you know, even in Gauntlet, right? Even in the stages where outside of Moltres, right, where Annie Steven probably is the better unit, doesn't mean that Singsuit Ethan's gonna be that much worse. So like, again, just both being flying type Master Affairs, right? I would say Singsuit Ethan probably the better place to be spending your gems on, right? And as for some other options, I guess this is the free Zinnia if you do have the power boost with Dragon Ascent. She's also free, you get that as well. I think she has better DPS. If you want, New Year's Lance has better DPS. I don't think he's the better unit though, just because he does need a lot of help, and obviously, you know, nowhere as good gauges wise, but he's definitely an option. Blue, if he could really get a really nice synchro like further expansion later on, right? He also does, in the right scenario, does have the better DPS advantage. But yeah, there's I wouldn't say a lot of other options, because like if you look at flying types, I'd say overall the top two are still like Singsuit Ethan and this guy, right? And it's just that flying types overall don't have great DPS units, right? They just don't have, yeah, there's not that like one big one. If you compare it to like Annie N or not Annie, but like, you know, Annie N or Annie Lily, they do have like much like obvious better DPS options. So if you want to go for Annie Steven for DPS, it's fine for flying type DPS, but I just wouldn't really recommend it over something like Singsuit Ethan, right? So yeah, what else? Yeah, the off type sync is pretty bad. On type sync is not as bad as people exaggerate it to be, but it's not great either, right? It's just pretty like average striker nuke on type with the super effective up next, right? But off type, it's definitely like just straight up like, yeah, it's very bad, very bad. So yeah, he's the pros and cons, I guess. So, all right, so is this a unit you should probably pull for, considering, again, like, because he did get a lot of buffs this past year, right? Whether it's his dragon damage with Dragon Zone and Lucas, or his flying damage with Annie Skyla with Flying Zone and Annie Skyla. Not my preferred unit for Flying Zone to actually fully, you know, buff Annie Steven, but Annie Skyla definitely does have some nice things for Annie Steven. First of all, the extra stat buffs that she could give Annie Steven, which could help his good form passive build a bit faster, and again, people always clown on Annie Steven for his nuke, but Annie Skyla basically fixes that, right? I personally don't think Annie Steven has a nuke issue anymore, really. I think he has a DPS issue. His DPS is not great, right? But I don't think his nuke is much of an issue, because again, either you could sync with your support EX, or you could just sync with Annie Skyla, which is, you know, Annie Skyla is a very good and powerful flying type nuker, right? So yeah, he did get much better, but again, question comes: is he worth pulling at this rate? He's definitely worth pulling if you're a big fan of Steven and you love his outfit, like Shiny Mega Rayquaza, which is very popular as a Pokemon, right? So if you know it's your favorite trainer, favorite Pokemon, all that stuff, you should always go for them, just like any other unit / banner. But otherwise, I'd say not really, man. I'd just probably give it like a 5.5 out of 10 score, right? Just because, again, if you really do want to go for a flying type damage dealer, I'd say Ethan, right? Like even though Ethan's DPS ceiling is lower than Annie Stevens, Ethan does have the AoE thing, which again is very, very nice in master mode. And even though Annie Stevens very, very good on gauge, it's not like Ethan's bad either, especially if you give up some damage in Ethan and then you go for like you hit like every other turn with his trainer move thing, which again, it's not great if you're trying to maximize damage, but you know, that could help with gauges with Singsu Ethan. Also, Singsu Ethan does actually have a really, really nice and powerful striker nuke over there, right? So yeah, both being flying type master versus ice type, that's probably the better option, right? I don't think it's as like big of a gap as most people think. Not that I don't think there is one. I think there is definitely a gap, but like some people talk about it like it's like, oh, it's like you know, it's like Singsu Red versus like Typhlosion or whatever, right? No, it's not. It's not that big gap, but it's also, I do think the gap is big enough where, unless you really, really like Annie Steven and China Mega Crazo, right, that I'd say in almost all scenarios you probably want to consider pulling for Singsuit Ethan instead, right? So yeah. In conclusion, he got better, definitely got better. It's not an L if you really like the character and you pull for him, right? And you get him. I mean, it's an L if you don't get him, right? So make sure you, again, 36.6k gems for pulling. I think he's overhated. He was definitely very bad on release, but the buffs definitely made him much better. His nuke is, again, in my opinion, completely fixed. Not that he, you know, his nuke, personal nuke is any better, but just the teams he runs on, right? With Annie Skyla, obviously that just you completely disregard his nuke, just nuke with Annie Skyla, right? Yeah, I think it's the unit is overhated, but he's also not like great either. Like you could probably, he's probably like, you know, he's bottom 3 Master Fairs, I'd say, right? It's really, you know, what you consider a bit more valuable. It's probably between him and Leon, right? Yeah, I don't know. Leon's very underrated though. I mean, I also think Annie Steven is underrated, but not because he's like great, because I don't think he's great. It's just that I feel like a lot of people's perception think he's like total garbage, which is not true. I mean, he's still, you know, despite not being great on DPS Frontier, it's at least better than a lot of people think. And again, people think the nuke is an issue, which I personally, I don't think it's that big of an issue. Just nuke with someone else, please. All right. Anyways, that's me this one, I guess. Hope y'all enjoyed, guys. Think in the comments below. Like, enjoy the videos for our channel, some more Pro Mouse content. So yeah, pull for them if you really like them, but otherwise, better save gems for other stuff. Right, the Greninja is still up. There's the Singsu Diantha coming. That's really, really nice. So yeah. Very, very sad because it's a cool unit, but probably nothing you, probably not something you really want to be spending your gems on, right? Master Fair banner and all. So, all right, have fun. I'll see you guys next one.